Millions of Roman Catholics pray with deep devotion, honor the scriptures, and maintain a powerful moral witness in the modern world. Real doctrinal divides cannot be bridged by sentimental language or by pretending the differences are minor. Historical honesty is the first requirement of love. To understand the fracture between East and West, we have to investigate a central question. Did the Roman Church preserve the exact faith of the undivided Church, or did it impose new, unilateral requirements? From the perspective of the Orthodox Church, Rome did not abandon the ancient Christian inheritance. It took those ancient treasures and bound them to later doctrinal developments that cannot be reconciled with the common faith of the first millennium. This is the tragedy of accretion. Rome maintained much of the original foundation, but then layered it with structural and dogmatic innovations that altered the Church's life and doctrine. We can evaluate this history through the lens of the pre-schism, historically continuous Western Orthodox tradition. Identifying these specific additions clarifies the nature of the East-West schism and reveals the historical structure that once united the Christian world. In the 5th century, Saint Vincent of Lerins provided a clear standard for the Catholic faith. It is that which has been believed everywhere, always, and by all. The Church can clarify existing truth to defend against heresy, but authentic development never contradicts the original deposit. It does not mandate novel dogmas that were unknown to the early Christians. The faith was delivered to the saints as a completed sacred deposit. No single generation and no single bishop has the right to revise it. The administrative structure of the early Church reflected this shared guardianship. While there was recognized order and regional primacy, no single bishop exercised absolute domination over the rest. We see this structure in the 5 ancient patriarchates: Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. They function together as interconnected nodes in a balanced network. Within this network, the Church of Rome held a genuine primacy of honor. Associated with Saints Peter and Paul, it served as the first among equals. This ancient honor is distinct from the structural shift formalized at the First Vatican Council, which claimed the Pope possesses immediate, supreme, and universal jurisdiction over every Christian. The very architecture of St. Peter's Square reflects this modern centralized authority. Transforming a primacy of honor into an absolute monarchy replaced the ancient Church's doctrine of conciliarity, the shared governance by councils of bishops, with supreme papal rule. In 1870, Rome dogmatically defined papal infallibility, moving the ultimate guarantee of truth away from the collective reception of the whole Church. Inside the nave of St. Peter's Basilica, this modern dogma was cemented as absolute law for the Roman Communion. Rome decreed that when the Pope speaks ex cathedra, his definitions are irreformable in themselves, divorcing doctrinal certainty from the conciliar guidance of the Holy Spirit. The precedent for this unilateral action began centuries earlier with the insertion of the Filioque into the Nicene Creed. This addition of the Latin phrase "and the Son," the Filioque, disrupted the patristic understanding of the Father as the sole source, or fountainhead, within the Trinity. Beyond the theology, the change was an ecclesiological break. One local patriarchate claimed the authority to alter the universal symbol of faith without the consent of an ecumenical council. The Filioque and infallibility show that Rome had adopted a new internal logic, one that functioned independently of the wider Christian body. With centralized authority established, Rome began defining localized theological theories as universal dogmas, specifically regarding the Virgin Mary. The dogma of the Immaculate Conception was necessitated by a uniquely Latin view of original sin as inherited personal guilt, a view the Orthodox Church does not share. While the early Church celebrated Mary's falling asleep in the Lord, the Dormition, Rome later defined her Assumption with rigid legal precision. In 1950, this definition was bound upon the faithful through the direct exercise of papal authority. These dogmas indicate a broader shift in how Rome approached soteriology, the doctrine of salvation itself. The early Church understood itself as a hospital. Sin was a spiritual sickness, and Christ was the physician who healed and restored human nature. The medieval Latin system reimagined the church as a courtroom. Theology became focused on managing legal debt, calculating guilt, and balancing penalties. This mindset birthed systems unknown to the early church: the specific definition of purgatory, the treasury of merit, and the transactional exchange of indulgences. By reducing salvation to a legal ledger of satisfaction and remission, the West moved away from the therapeutic spirit of the ancient faith. This drive to define every mystery extended to the Eucharist, where Rome utilized scholastic categories of substance and accidents to mandate the term transubstantiation. Papal authority was also used to alter ancient practices, such as the unilateral decision to withhold the Eucharistic chalice from the laity. The hardening of these ideological divisions eventually led to physical violence. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, Latin crusaders sacked Constantinople. They looted churches and desecrated the Orthodox capital, deeply scarring relations between East and West. In the modern era, Rome's centralized power continues to destabilize its own heritage. For centuries, the Roman liturgy was a symbol of stability and inherited reverence. However, following the Second Vatican Council, Rome introduced dramatic liturgical changes that many faithful experienced as a rupture from their own history. The instability of the modern Roman liturgy reveals the reality of the papal system: a centralized authority possessing the power to manufacture or erase inherited worship. We must acknowledge what Rome's faithfully retained: the doctrine of the Trinity, the Incarnation, the sacraments, and apostolic succession. But the volume of later additions is significant: universal jurisdiction, infallibility, the filioque, the Immaculate Conception, and the treasury of merit. Returning to orthodoxy does not require Western Christians to adopt Eastern cultural aesthetics or abandon their own history. The alternative is a return to the pre-schism, fully orthodox patrimony of the ancient Christian West. This is the legacy of the Western saints: Ambrose of Milan, Leo the Great, Benedict, and Patrick. The faith once delivered is a sacred trust. The creed, the conciliar structure, and the mysteries are not raw materials for any generation to revise. The Orthodox Church issues a call homeward: back to primacy without supremacy, back to confession as healing, and back to the Eucharist as a holy mystery. The ancient faith is the living reality of the apostles. It remains open to all who seek the truth in humility.